Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you really want to see that there, but
Yeah, be careful, get some more balance.
Oh, look at all those options.
What's that? I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes and we can rearrange, I guess, if we have to.
That and Jim that are on, like, pushing up all this activity.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Speakers
Where is that? It's right here.
Is it?
It's an owl, but it's also that one up there.
Oh, that's nice. See why they call it an owl.
Yeah. And I haven't ever used it before. I haven't captured it.
And it's oil. They don't bring the same books we do.
Fucking mysterious.
And it's
And she's fucking mysterious way. He's fucking mysterious way.
fascinating.
Yeah, put ours right here. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next to the garden. Yes, that's okay.
Back to the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen, there ought to be a balance.
Yeah, speakers. That's
Yeah, but the next one that we're gonna have. I think Dave Burns, on YouTube. And so we're trying to make sure we have things in order that we do. Good broadcast for the people online.
Like how to do the curing and stuff.
It was there a minute ago. Hey, little owl.
Can I get you that? This goes.
Well, I was trying to get it as close to the audience. It's supposed to look at whoever's talking, and I had a whole bunch of activity there a minute ago, but now I don't have any.
Wait till you're sit, we've got books from the library.
Hand me my phone if you would. Al.
Here we go.
About that on,
Sit us here.
Won't be able to line, yeah, corner.
I didn't say on board.
Yeah.
Turn that table, we'll sit next to it. All right.
You'll need. Wait, I want to have my table.
That's legal.
Read it.
Oh.
I'm the greeter.
Are you getting him?
I'm all my greeter.
Anybody online hear us? Give me a thumbs up.
Okay.
And can you see anything?
All right.
We're trying something different tonight.
Where's Tom Press? He doesn't come in. Okay.
We can hear you, but we cannot see anything.
Okay.
Okay, we're working on it.
Yeah.
Need another.
Beekeeper. Oh.
We're trying out a new owl that's supposed to point at whoever's talking.
Sit there.
We're playing get to that chair.
All that.
This is me, but the music come down another notch. Now I'll start over here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if Tom's back from Cozumel yet.
Oh, really?
Cozumel, he went to Cozumel, died.
You say they got engaged and they're in Cozumel?
Huh? Yeah.
That's how rumors start, right?
Yeah. So,
For that, but okay.
I'm not sure.
Cindy.
Cindy has no voice.
Oh.
Supposed to be coming.
I think she got first time.
Okay, I'm gonna go out and come back in, people.
I remember it's usually in my refrigerator.
He ran away
Can
from
we
you.
take another row?
Sure.
No, I don't like. They would. We weren't in bike share.
Your video blinked in, but it's gone again.
Okay, that's what I did. There we go.
There it is.
Then the chair would be right here.
Why is it?
First chair.
Interesting. Oh, is that something?
When you talk,
Yeah.
it'll look at you.
Yeah.
So that's the new thing with this owl. It's gonna point at whoever's talking.
Experimental route.
But let us know how the audio is from it, once we get to presenting. See how far up it can go.
We lost the video again. And we lost the audio.
Hello.
Hello. They're having trouble with their audio and video at the location.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Did it? Okay, then I gotta make sure we had it red lighted. All right, I'm not touching it again. You go this way. There you go, buddy. Okay.
That's it's there.
Okay, you can see PK. Can you hear us? You can see me because I'm talking. Okay. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Lost it again. Oh, come on. There. All right, I'm going to sit down.
Well, she said it was.
Okay, so how many views does this? Okay,
So you can still see it bigger on their end.
okay.
So I can make it where we don't see
The names.
the names.
Hi Valerie, hi Steve, Andy, Karen, Jim, Rachel,
There's my view. There's your face.
Mr. Kretz.
There.
Oh, Valerie, no.
Hide self view, full screen, that's what I want, right? But we want that full screen.
But it's Valerie.
I know.
Hi Valerie, your name's
View. I want,
Hi, this looks pretty awesome. I'm fixing a little bit of dinner. So I got
Oh,
one,
that's
I got one hand in chicken right now, so that's why I couldn't say hello immediately, but hello, PK, hello.
so, do you guys see just PK and then me and then the
Valerie's
gallery?
waving to me.
I see
Okay.
you, Cindy, and PK.
Okay, I'm trying to make it where we can see the whole big screen, but I don't know that there is.
Is there something down here?
Hide non-video.
Hey, Cindy, can you just touch that window?
Here, hold on.
And show
Yeah. Need to do that.
I'm sorry.
Be careful.
Okay, I'm not touching it anymore.
Careful.
I'm not touching it anymore.
There,
them? Oh, wow, that's wild.
is that better?
All right, I got it.
For you guys anyway.
So we're not gonna watch, I'll be watching the camera.
We'll see, you can see the presenters, so they're a panel right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I know.
So this-
We're looking at a flag and we're looking at people and then we're seeing the entire room.
Looking at me. Can I talk? It's like it even does the flags over there.
That's the voice of freedom speaking.
Hey, you're.
Somehow she's silent.
Yes.
I
take it on my
Going on, and then you can just do a panel.
Okay, right. Move over. I'm sitting.
That's fantastic.
We're standing. And you just have to let me the hands. It's, I'm looking at what they're looking at, so that's why I'm kind of doing there and stuff. Welcome to our meeting. We had another speaker lined up and things didn't work out, so we changed it. And we're gonna talk about honey. How many of you think we were ready to honey harvest?
Been doing it all week.
Yeah, it is the season and stuff, so, okay, okay, Bees and Brews is Haynes on Main in Morton. I will. Mackinac, excuse me, Mackinac, 6 to 8. So that's going on. Our next meeting, we have David Burns is actually gonna come and speak to us, and he's gonna talk, about leveling up. And what that has to do with is citizen scientists. I don't know if you are familiar with that term. It's where everybody, you might be looking for certain things and you put it in, and then, they kind of look at that data and go in. An example would be, there's a bird count in January that the Audubon does. Everybody goes out and counts all their birds. Then they compare it year to year to see, oh, we've got a lot more birds this year. Oh, this bird is missing from that time frame. So what it is so if we're all looking at, how many of you had mites, and everybody puts in how many mites you have. So it's a way of getting more data to get more information for how to direct what's going on with bees. So, how many hives you have, how many lists. So there's a wide variety when it comes to citizen scientists. It's basically, they kind of give you some guidelines to follow. and so you kind of add that. Actually, I did a tick one for U of I. Somebody was doing research and you collected ticks and sent them off to her, you know, so, but then so I'm doing part of that. And so again, it's everybody adding in, and that's giving more data to get a bigger picture rather than what's going on in Kelly's area as you know, town, and what's going on in my town or Ken's town might be totally different, weather, flowers, bees. But if you add everybody, you get a much better picture. So we're kind of excited to have him next month for our meeting. Let's see, what else? Saturday is a hive inspection at my house. The hives are doing great. We did a mite treatment and caught a swarm. Tom came in and we went into one hive and it had 6 queens. So we kind of did a lot of splitting. And then the next day I'm gonna go walk the dogs and there's a swarm for me to catch instead. Oh, we're gonna delay the dog walk and go get the swarm. So that's what's been going on at my place. And again, anybody is welcome, even non-members or non-beekeepers, because I do have extra suits out there that we can, you know, utilize. So I've had a very nice variety of people coming out. So anything else I should add, kids? Oh, okay. Tom Kretz is our president. Cindy, raise your hand. She is our vice president. James, he's on our board. Let's see, who else is on our?
I'm bored too.
Ken, you're
Ken
bored.
bored, yeah,
Yeah,
he gets
Ken's-
bored.
Ken gets very bored, so Ken's on your board.
Valerie's online.
Valerie's online. She is also on our board. She's our secretary, so she's supposed to be keeping notes.
We got-
Yeah.
I'm-
Oh, okay. Tom is one of our consultants. I know he was diving in Cozumel and I guess he's not back. Cynthia. Okay, she's the better half of the super deckers. She is an important person to keep happy. She's the equipment manager. So if you want the equipment, she's the one you talk with. All right?
I'll throw it in.
Or also
Okay.
the library.
Yeah, and also the librarian, but you know, equipment, and we're gonna be talking about this, you know, making sure everybody is responsible for equipment. We have a lot of equipment for you to use. We have 2 extractors. We got an uncapping kit, and you'll get all this on, I'll send it out to you so you again can review it. It's got 2 different types of strainers. We got a hot knife, we got a rope, punch roller, we've got a scratcher.
Capping
Hot
paper.
knife.
Uncapping.
I said hot knife. I said that. A bucket.
Did we get that house trainer yet?
Yeah, and we got a house strainer. Yep. Well, I'm gonna see how mine works. So I got 2, one for you, one for the club, one for us. Yes. But it's fitting in the boxes. It's a full box. Let's see, what else is in there, Cindy? Cynthia?
Sounds fine. You'll have to request, it's a full, honey frame extractor, but does it also?
It does deeps and mediums.
Yeah,
Okay, okay, and we'll we'll go over the extractor a little bit more, because there's different kinds of extractors within that. The honey bucket, the bottling bucket, I will suggest that you get one. So we're gonna be going over all the equipment and cleaning the equipment, how to get the honey out of your hives and stuff, and what you're looking for, and why you might get, we talked last month typically about honey bound. Okay, Tim, you talked about being honey bound and stuff. Who else was kind of getting honey bound? Me. We're not your girls. Yeah, and
We have,
Okay.
what we did with ours, when we had that, we just had a deep super up above and then just put them up there to try to make money, because they were just terrible this spring.
terrible.
Getting honey bun.
Oh,
They
okay.
were just really on.
It's
Surprisingly,
for as
with the drought,
dry
yeah.
as it's been,
It was kind of-
there has been a really good harvest. So the girls have not had to compete with rainstorms, I guess, because rain will wash away the nectar. So that may be part of why, even though the drought would think, okay, they don't have the moisture, but it's not washing away the nectar within that, okay? All right. Okay, anything else before we kind of Friday? go through this. All right. Collecting, and just like everything else in beekeeping, there's many different ways of pulling your frame. So you're gonna go into your frames. Now, this is a time of year you might use that queen excluder. The purpose of the queen excluder is to kind of isolate the frames you plan on pulling so the queen is not laying, because you cannot pull a frame of honey that has brood on it. And know what your brood looks like, so you get drones at the bottom. So that's one of the reasons you might use a queen excluder. Be sure that that queen excluder is off for the winter. You might want to have that queen excluder off when you are doing treatments. Reason being, depending on the type of treatment, mite treatment you're doing, where she needs to go. And she really doesn't care where she lays her eggs. So just like you, sometimes you sleep in the bedroom, sometimes you sleep on the couch watching TV. She does even though we call it a brood box, yes, we call it honey supers, it makes absolutely no difference to the queen. And the bees may change it around on you and lay in any one of those boxes or any of those frames. So it's a misnomer to say, oh, that's a brood box, that's where she should be laying. She doesn't care. So, but you might, if you've got like a cut 2 deep, or if you've got 3 mediums, you might put the queen excluder. Anything that's close to being harvestable, you put up top. You can also, even if it has brood in it, put it above the queen excluder. You do have to wait until it hatches out and they fill it with honey. So if you can kind of keep that under the queen excluder, it's probably to your advantage. Because again, if you've got to wait for them to hatch and then fill, may take some time. And again, they may be filling up, if they're still looking for space to put that honey, they'll go down, they'll start filling up where the queen is at and laying. So those are some things, one of the strategies you can use. So one of the strategies, queen excluder, keeping the brood in one place, honey frames in another place, and those are the ones you harvest. I also try to do, and think about it, you put those on top. So when I go to pull, I don't have to go all the way down to the bottom of the hive to pull those honey supers. So what I do is last week at the I guess it was 2 weeks ago at the club hives, I basically really disassemble the whole frame, put the girls where I want them to be, where I want the open space. And and so I kind of, okay, the brood's down here, any open comb, so it's brood on the bottom, next one, open comb for her to lay. Then there was one with a little bit of honey, queen excluder, and then 2 boxes that was just honey, trying close to being capped. So that was up on top. But, and I also did mite treatment. Now, your mite treatments, some of them can have honey supers on, some of them cannot have supers on. You've got to read your labels. Some are temperature control. And Formic Pro, like
This week, too hot.
correct, absolutely, this week, so, and it's and primarily, so you've got to read the directions on those temperature controls, whether you can have honey supers or not.
Like the grind.
And so, acrylic acid, just recently, they were no honey supers. They have, about 2 years ago, maybe 3, okayed it 4 honey supers on for acrylic acid vaporization treatment. Some of them, it's absolutely not. So you've got to think about what you're going to do. If I'm going to treat with this, what do I pull those honey supers off, treat, and then put them back on? So that, and then what are you going to do with them while you're waiting? Because if there's any pest in there, hive beetles, flax moth, hive beetles is the one that will be, you put them, I'll put them in a tub for a few days and you go back and it's full of these white little larvae, and that's your hive beetle. Okay. So that's one of the ways to kind of exclude get the queen. Now there are different ways. So now you got to get the bees off your hive, off your frames. All right. And again, there are various ways. I'm somewhat rough with the girls. I take my frame and I have a tub. Sometimes and I just kind of pound it on the tub or the tray, and it shakes the bees off. And I'll maybe have 2 or 3 after that. I blow them off. I blow them off, just,
So Patty?
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you putting that tub? Are you putting it right next to the hive or are you pulling it away from the hive?
I have a step method. Here's what I do, and again, so I've got a tub, okay, I shake the bees in and I put the ones I think I'm gonna take in a tub. And that's kind of open to the bees, but it's behind the hive, and they seem to, some of them will get on it, some of them won't, you know, there'll be a lot less bees. But then I can evaluate, oh, that's because I wanna pull frames that is close to cap as possible, all right? So then, okay, so, oh, yeah, I'm gonna take these, that tub. Then I've got a tub over here with a lid. Shake them off, and I put them in the tub with the lid, so the bees can't get back into it, all right? And actually, the tubs I have will hold a 8-frame box, so I can put either a medium or a deep 8-frame box in that tub. So then I've got 99% of the bees out of there. I then put it in my little my little vehicle that I move, and then I move it a little bit farther, and then I check to see if there's any other bees. So I kind of shake them off, and then I kind of gradually step away from, you know, so it's a step process. And again, there's different ways of doing it. This is how I do it. All right.
So you're thumping the bees off into a tub?
Yeah,
I just do them into the hive.
Well, it depends. Sometimes into the hive,
Yeah.
yes, and into the hives, it kind of depends. I did find that sometimes when I just kind of go down with the frames, sometimes it breaks down. Yeah, so I kind of go, yeah, so I will.
It is hard on the equipment.
Yeah, so I will do it that way, you know, I will go into the hive. Once I've got some space in there, I can go into there and then kind of, again, work that. And most of you who worked with me, I'm not the most conventional person, sorry. And then, you know, so then the next tub is a covered tub, and then I take it farther away and get any bees left off, and then it goes to the garage ready to be stuff. And so that might be one. Okay, so Cindy, what do you do?
Wait, can I go back to that? Sorry. You move the tub that has sealed on it away from the hive that has bees in the sealed tub. I'm confused as to.
Not many. I have a few. Let's see how I can. I'm gonna see if I can demonstrate this. All right, let me see. So again, there is different ways of doing it. I find this works
Understood.
for me. I'm little, I'm small, I'm not lifting heavy boxes. So that's my hive. That table is my hive that you can't see on there. Then there's a tub, that's an open tub. Pull the frame, either shake them into the hive or, so actually I do usually put into the hive, then I put in the tub, get a bunch, and then I'm kind of like, okay, these are the ones I have. Then I have another tub here with the lid. And again, I do another shake, lift, put it in, down. So I have maybe 5, 6 bees in the tub. Then I move that tub far away and I get those bees out. That's what, and again, and we're gonna go over some other methods of getting those bees out of your frames.
Understood. When you say you get the bees out after you've moved the tub, how do you do that? Do you shake them again or?
It depends on how many are in there. I usually what they'll do is they'll fly up towards the lid trying to get out. I lift up the lid, shoo out. And so that's what I'll do. Occasionally I just go, kind of like, okay, crawl up on my finger. Okay, bye, young lady. And then I'll get another one, crawl on my finger and bye, young lady. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So I think what you're saying though is that PK only carries 1 frame at a time. So she puts each frame and then takes that frame and puts it into her vehicle, and then her vehicle goes to her extracting area. So she's not lifting a full box of honey.
No, I understood that. It sounded like she might put 3 or 4 frames in that tub with the lid and then move the tub away and then let the bees out. And I think that was my confusion.
I have an open tub. Okay, so there's an open tub. That's where I kind of put the frames, but I've already shaken majority of the bees back in the hives. And I do it during the day. Foragers are out. The bees that are on the frames are typically the nurse bees then. So when I shake them back into the hive, they're not out looking for it. for those frames of honey. And so that way they are not, so yeah, there's still bees there, but it's not a robbing. Now, could I do it that same way maybe in August or early September? No, maybe robbing might be happening. So I've got to maybe do slightly different structure. So I have an open tub, shake the bees in the hive, put the frame in the open tub, get that full, then I kind of go to my closed tub. Then okay, so pick that frame up, do another quick shake, put it in the tub. I might have maybe 5 in the covered tub. I guess maybe my tub term is tote. And so that way. So I'm getting them off. So then, then I'll drive away and then I'll make one more look before I head to the house. As far as if there's any bees in that covered tote.
Makes sense.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's what I do. Now, other ways of doing this, okay, there are fume boards. It's basically.
Hey, PK.
Yes.
Does it take you a while to do that? And the reason I ask is because, well, this Sunday I ended up doing like 3 things. I combined my failing hive, I treated for mites, and then I pulled 8 frames of honey, and it took me about an hour. Oh, look at that! I'm on TV. It took me about an hour to get through all of that. So I was thinking doing that frame by frame is definitely going to save your back, because my back was already a little sore. So now I picked up 8 frames full of honey, and it was just kind of like, oh my God. So but on the other end, it's shaking the bees, go over here, shaking the bees, go over here. So does that take you a while to get through that?
Once you get it down, it didn't take us long. I had some other, I must admit the other people, but I'll do my hives that way, and I'll go in and typically I'll work 2 hives, probably maybe 3 hours, so maybe an hour and a half per hive as I do that. But I'm also treating for mites, so that means I'm also making sure how much brood that hive has, that queen. So I'm doing a real thorough inspection at that same time. Now, if I've got, but later on, okay, so I've got some uncapped frames, I put them in the top box. So then I go back and I'm just dealing with the top box. So I'm just dealing with those 8, 10 frames at the top box, looking at those, moving them. Now, I've got my own extractor. So when I extract, I then freeze those frames for 24 hours to make sure all pests are done after I extract. And then when I go the next day to another hive, I take those frames that were extracted. As I'm pulling those frames, they're being replaced with extracted frames. So I'm doing a dual purpose with that and stuff. So so I will put on top frames that are close to being capped, close to being removed. All right. Okay, there's a.
PK, did you say you freeze the frames before or
No,
after the extraction?
After the extraction. I freeze them after the extraction because, and part of that is that pest, especially the hive beetle, any eggs in there, you're killing those eggs. Same thing with the wax moths that might possibly have some eggs in there. You freeze them so they're killed before I introduce them to a new hive. All right.
Is that a freezer you only put honey things in?
I have that privilege. Yes. I have a freezer that's the only thing I put in. Now, actually, and I'll even put those, I will put, it's been real hot, so even though these frames are frozen, they heat up pretty quick and I can put them in the hive the next day. So I freeze them for 24 hours. So I have kind of a rotation. So you could, if you pull 8, okay, so our extractor has 6 frames. You could do 6 frames, actually 12 would be good. Do one, and then I just have a little bit of space in the freezer. Yeah, somebody gave me a freezer, so I put it toward as my honey freezer.
What about, my question is, what about, so I've got 8 frames in the basement. I have them covered up. I'm going to probably put my box fan on top just to evaporate a little bit more moisture off of it. Even though they're all capped, they're 100% capped. I'm going to just make sure I get enough moisture out of them, and, probably do that tomorrow. But my question is, do I need to go ahead and freeze those? Because they could also contain larvae. So, or should I just wait until after I extract to freeze them?
I would extract fairly quickly, fairly soon. I would leave them there for months because of the life cycle of the hive beetle. I would, look at the top, look and see if you have anything, so you may have to inspect those to see if anything is going on, if you've got a problem or not.
I might
Is
just
there an
freeze them then.
issue? Sorry,
I don't know.
Oh, no, I was
about
just gonna say, I might just freeze them.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, is there an issue with freezing with capped honey?
Huh?
Is there an issue freezing capped honey frames?
I'm gonna ask the group,
No.
No,
not that we know of.
The only thing is when you take them out, while they are coming up to room temperature, it's best to put something on the bottom and on the top, so it keeps that ambient temperature with the moist air off of the frames as they come up to room temperature.
Yeah, so in other words, okay, honey is what's the term? Hydroscope, it absorbs moisture. So think about when you take a steak, Kelly, you take those steaks out of the freezer, right? And you get that little frost layer on, you pull those frames out of the freezer, that frost level is gonna go on, is gonna attract to that honey, and that just has to do with temperature, but then that honey might absorb that moisture, so then your moisture content go up, and that's when molding can happen.
So what
So
do
when you say put something above and below, are you talking paper towels or just dish towels or?
If you just set it on the floor and then just set something solid like a political sign on top of it. On the top, if you set it on the floor, that seals your bottom. And then you can stack your supers up, or if you've only got one super, then just put something solid on top like a political sign. That'll seal the top of it, and that way, as it comes up to temperature, no ambient air from outside can get in.
Okay, that makes sense?
You've got a whole.
I'm
box
thinking
of-
about frames. I'm not taking a whole super. I got 4 frames in the freezer
Okay.
that
And
are
you're only
capped
talking
honey.
about just putting one super, put one super on the floor, put your frames in it. And then just put something solid on top of it that moisture can't.
She's talking frame, no box, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that's okay. I can put the frames, even though there's not, it's an 8-frame box and I have only 4 frames. I think he's saying just put them in the super, but put them on the
Well,
floor, like
you
a
could
cement
also
floor or
just-
something. And then
you
put a
could just
political
put-
sign on top so the moisture stays within the context of that super. Is that what you're saying?
Another option would be just put them into a tote with a lid.
Yes.
That might
Yeah.
be simpler. So you don't need a box, you can do it, yeah,
Ours are saran wrapped. Can they just stay in their saran wrap?
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, if you got them saran wrapped, then the moisture shouldn't.
Again, there's a whole different ways to do
We
stuff.
took it out because we were honey
Honey
bound, and so there was a lot of nectar on the frames, and so we're like, what do we even do with that? I mean,
Oh, okay, the nectar is uncapped,
it's uncapped, half of it is uncapped.
that could mold.
Right, so I'm just kind of treating it like, you can eat it as soon as we take it off, but we're not going to keep it for a long period of time, but keep it in the fridge. Is
You
that
could,
okay?
you could throw it in the freezer.
Yeah,
You could, so what she's saying is she's got some capped, some uncapped on a frame. She wrapped it in saran wrap. You could throw that in the freezer
Yeah.
and that would do it. But then when you take it, and then you take it out when you want to use it.
right.
But if you take it out and let it come up to room temperature and hold it maybe 2 weeks room temperature, that nectar could then also then spoil.
Which is why I was planning on keeping it in the fridge.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
Last longer. I was just planning on making sure we use it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and stuff, yeah. So, yeah.
The interesting
A
thing,
fridge will help dehydrate it too.
Oh.
Think about your food drying out in the fridge.
Yeah, you had said earlier, make sure most of it is capped. What's our percentage? What am I looking at? Obviously, but we have.
It's, okay, 10 frames, if 9 of them are fully capped and one's 75–80% capped, you're okay. If I have 2 frames, one's capped, one's 70–80% capped, and then I'm changing it, so I'm not diluting it. Ken?
an interesting thing we ran into when we harvested our first honey, we were out of boxes to put on the hives, so we had it whole honey. And we had a number of frames where it was like 3/4 capped and there was just a little bit open. And I think it's because of the dirt. They hadn't capped that. But we ran our tester on it. And that uncapped honey was drier than the capped honey.
Like I said, they don't read the same books we do.
It was down, the uncapped was down to 14%.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's helpful if you get enough honey to invest in a moisture test.
Okay, the club does have a moisture refractor that you can borrow. You know, it's the one the club has is like a $400 unit, but you can test at that time. But, you know, and there's some other ones. Make sure it is a honey refractor, because there are some for other uses that doesn't measure honey the way it should. So it has to be a honey refractor. There's some are easier to read than others. Some have this kind of like slanted prism, I'll call it, and you kind of look through it. That's sometimes can be hard to read as far as where that line is and stuff like that. So yeah, and I test the honey after I extract. Now, okay.
Is that extractor at the Decker Bee Supply, or
No,
is it at
it's
the
a PK.
PK's?
All right, and we'll get to that. Okay, so let's get back to just getting rid of bees. Okay, there are fume boards where you basically put, it's a, okay, Valerie, how did the bees react to your fume board smells?
Okay, so I have a funny story. Let me turn on my video for my funny story. Okay, I'm in my kitchen cutting up vegetables. I have a funny story. So last year, I decided that it was going to be a great idea to treat for mites, to harvest honey, and to do something else. There was a third thing that we were going to do as well. Treat for mites, harvest honey, and do this third thing. I got the order. I got the
box. Was it
What'd
pulling
you
a
say?
box?
I think it was put on a box. I think it was pulling a box. I got the order wrong. So I put on the Formic Pro, which caused the bees to go up and caused the bees to go down. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to get them out of the honey super now. So then I sprayed I think it was I'll go in the basement here in a second and get the name of it. I think it was Honey Be Gone or Honey Bandit. I sprayed the Honey Bandit on a rag. I put the rag over the top of the open hive, and the bees did not care. They wanted to get away from Formic Pro as fast as possible. So it turned into a mess. And then on top of that, we were doing that in like August or September. So then it turned into a robbing situation as well. So 0 out of 10 stars, do not recommend. This year, I had my order better. So the first thing that I did was I pulled off a super. Then I tore apart most of the hive. Then I put on Formic Pro. Then I did a paper combine with my other hive that has been failing for the better part of the season. And that was a much better order. To answer your question, they do not like the smell of Honey Bandit. So as soon as you put it on, you hear this zoo of bees that are running away. And on the side of Honey Bandit, it says leave it for like 7 to 10 minutes. I left it for about 7 minutes while I went to go see what was happening with my failing hive. And they eventually worked their way out of the super. So this is one of the easiest honey harvests that I've ever had. And all I had to do was spray down a towel and just very gently lay the towel over the top of the super and just wait. And then usually there was only 1 or 2 bees on there. So I uncovered the towel, I pulled out a frame, I took my bee brush, I brushed off whatever remaining bees there were, took that out. I used PK's method. I put it in a box over here. I covered up that box. Then I went back, took the next one out and put it in the box. So I worked frame by frame by frame.
Yeah. Sometimes bee brushes, sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. And the bee brush has a tendency to get real sticky. Some people actually use feathers, or actually like take a goldenrod, you got goldenrod or some of your weeds around your hives, you break off the goldenrod and just kind of use the plant to brush away. And so when it gets sticky, you can throw it away. But the bee brush sometimes, because it kind of rolls the bees as you're doing it.
They get very mad at that. Last year, oh, that was the other thing I was trying to do. So last year on my mother's hive, I did not use the honey bandit. We ended up pulling this big frame full of bees, full of honey, and got the brush and just kind of tapped it once and then tried to, excuse me, tapped it once and then tried to brush the bees off. And they hated that. And they ended up stinging me 5 times in the thighs. So that was an eventful, time.
Lady.
Yeah, very much less. Also, the hive was like right at my chin. So it's just kind of like trying to work taller than yourself is another important lesson. So,
Okay.
I don't like you, PK. I don't know that I would recommend bee brushes unless you have just a few bees on a frame.
And I'm full of hot air and wind. I can blow pretty hard and stuff. So I blow those, I shake, move them over, shake again, blow any extra off, I'll get 1 or 2. And especially if my tub's over at the, it's called the Ladybug, that's my RTV. I do it and I move over there. By the time, as I blow them off, I'm just kind of moving the frame so nobody can find it and then put it in that covered tub. So there's various ways to do it. So you can have the smell method of removing these. So you again, you've got to have what you're going to harvest the top. Put this on and drives the bees away. There's fume boards and the honey bandit and what other methods are?
I use smoke.
Smoke, okay. Smoke can flavor the honey too. So high amount of smoke. So smoke, but to get some of them out there, they go away. Tim, what you do?
We saw a couple videos where people were using leaf blowers. Turn the frames up on the side and just.
Yeah, and leaf blowers will work too. I will warn you on
Don't
this.
use the highest power one.
Okay.
Go to Harvard.
Okay, I got one, except the vent is big enough for bees to get in. And so the bees go in there and then more bees go after it. So I have to put, I have done that where I've got a leaf blower and you can do a leaf blower on it. But I check your vent and I had to put like a mesh bag over it. So it's still vented, but the bees couldn't get in. It kind of made it sticky and they went after it and stuff like that.
And it depends on your brand of leaf blower.
Yeah, so if you have one and stuff like that. So again, a leaf blower. So there's many different ways.
So for those of you, sorry. So for those of you who use leaf blowers, I've seen a couple of different models where you can modulate the strength of the air, and there are some that are specialty. There are some that are specialty leaf blowers specific for bees. So the question I have about that is, do you buy models that modulate the airflow so that you're just not blowing bees like halfway across the yard, something like that?
My problem was holding the frame and the leaf blower at the same time was a little bit hard. That's where my issue was. I tried that, like I said, and so various times I've tried it and it was okay and it'll work, but it didn't become my choice. So again, what will work for you? So try one. Oh, I don't like this. Try another one. There's another one, and some of it is this one. This disadvantage is you have to kind of do it 24 hours in advance. There's a bee escape board. So it's a couple times. A lot of you on your inner cover, you have that oval circle, and in your kit, you got this little white insert. And that white insert is a one-way door, is what it is. So that might, so it's, the idea is the bees go through, but they can't come back up. The ones I have are actually like it's like a little maze. It's triangles. It's got a hole, bees go in. And then it's like a maze on a triangle with a screen. So they have a hard time getting back in on that. So that you put it on and leave it 24 hours. So again, the bees leave, hopefully leave and you've got less bees in there. So you're kind of making a one-way door. Whether it's that small little insert, whether it's this bee escape board that, like I said, is like a triangle shape and it's like a little maze, like a mouse maze type thing that they go in. So there's various ways and see what will work for you. Sometimes you may not, you may only have like, okay, somebody was talking about 4 frames, that's all they have. That's okay too. So it's, you can do it. So there's various ways of trying it.
But one thing you want to do is make sure you take empty frames with you, so when you pull the 4, you've got 4 new frames. To
Yeah,
put in there.
and
You don't want to
they
leave it.
can go, okay, like, one of the, I pulled the frames off the club hives. And I didn't have enough frames to put in. I thought, okay, well, I'll extract this evening, throw it in the freezer, and 24 hours later, so 24 hours, so it's actually like a day and a half, I could put the frames back in. Sure, they didn't build a lot, but you could see, a little, maybe a deck, a card size of, a playing deck card size of cone that they had started putting in those empty holes. And then some, and sometimes you definitely need to put frames in. So, having the frames, okay, yeah.
What's the latest you can pull honey? Is it like all the way to?
You can pull late. Okay, how much you pull is one of your tricks. Okay, so pulling now is great. The bees are pretty, so they've got food out there, they're going. When you start getting more into mid to late August, pulling frames, they're a little grumpier. Because they're in that winter mode. I've got to have all the honey I want for winter. So that's where if I pull in mid to late August or September, I may encourage, all of a sudden they kind of like, hey, somebody show them honey, let's go over to this hive and steal their honey. So you get robbing going on. That's when you might have to put a robbing screen on if you develop that. And it was much harder to get the bees off the frames and keep them off the frames.
Hey,
Yeah.
another thing is if you've got, let's say you've got a super of honey. And you leave that super of honey on until September, they'll eat a big portion of that honey through the dirt. And so if you want to have honey to harvest, you harvest that honey and then through the dirt, you can feed them sugar water. And that way you get some honey, and you can still feed them the sugar, which is perfectly healthy for them to, it's as good as the honey virtually. And they're happier with, actually, the bees tend to continue to make more brood if you're feeding them that 1-to-1 syrup, as opposed to honey, because it keeps them stimulated to keep that brood nest going.
Yeah.
And so you have a net benefit by doing it, really.
But part of the trick is taking it that late, say September. They're on their goldenrod mix. That is the last hurrah of food. So if I pull that and think, oh, okay, I'll put the frames back and they'll fill it, there's nothing to fill it with. So you're better off going a little bit earlier than late within that. So in that, and it's, you kind of, and people will say, well, how much honey do I leave? Some of it depends on how many bees you have in the hive. So you have a nuke, doesn't need that much honey because there's not that much bees. You've got, 60 just packed with bees, they need more honey. So there's a little bit of balance on that. You don't want to take all of it. So now they've got time to kind of start refilling and might be their winter food. But in September, you're trying possibly to reduce your hives as small as possible. So you're trying to compact your bees, but it depends on how many bees are in that hive. Hey, welcome to there. I'm glad you could take care of your boy. Ken she had to do ER work with them, stuff like that. So you've got to leave them enough honey to eat, but you kind of like how much, and it's usually about 60 pounds is what.
For winter time, 60
For winter
pounds,
time, approximately 60 pounds in the hive.
Is that an
But
equivalent to the?
usually if you've got your hive and you've got your 2 bees, okay, and you've got 1 or 2 supers above it. If you pull those supers, they've got a significant amount of honey that's sitting in the brood chambers too.
Yeah.
And so that's going to give them gonna give them honey to be able to eat, you know, through the dirt and again, you want to feed them through the dirt because that helps them keep that level of honey up in the hive. And you're gonna help them build sugar water and honey for the winter time in those 2 brood chambers. But between those 2 brood chambers, you want at least 60 pounds of honey for them to get through the winter.
The
That's
other
what you're
thing,
getting.
the other thing is university studies have been done that show that nectars from goldenrod can actually be somewhat hard on the bees.
Yeah.
If you have a hard winter, because the bees need to get out and defecate, it's right. But
How do you
the-
assess, sorry, how do you assess what 60 pounds of honey means?
Okay,
We pull all of our goldenrod honey, and then we put feeders on the bees at 2-to-1 ratio after we pull the supers for the goldenrod
okay,
honey.
so the
So a
question,
medium frame of honey weighs, is about 4 pounds of honey. Medium,
one
Yeah.
frame,
one frame,
okay.
one frame
right,
is
Okay,
about 4 pounds.
okay,
Yeah,
so, okay, so 10
Thank you.
frames of mediums is 40 pounds. And part of it also, you basically kind of try and lift the back of the hive. Does it feel light or does it feel heavy? That's gonna help. you
Yeah, but that
decide.
has bees in it and bees are heavy too.
Yeah, and stuff, but you know, it's,
not as heavy as honey.
Yeah.
It should feel like a box of rocks.
yeah, so, okay, if you think about a frame of, hold a frame of brood and a frame of honey, there is quite a bit of weight difference within that. So you can, you know, you pick up a frame, a lot of times I can tell what's on that frame before I ever look at it by the weight as I pull it.
So if you're really concerned, a double deep hive should be about 150 pounds
Yeah.
total.
Well,
You can get one of
you need to
these little,
clarify whether that's a 10 frame or an 8 frame, because people
A 10
have
frame,
8s and
yes.
10s.
a two deep 10 frame. It should be about 150 pounds. But if you're going 8 frame and you're going mediums, you're still gonna stack that hive up to be about the right size. It should still be about 150 poundish. And what I'm getting at is you can get these scales that's actually a handle and then it's got a little hook. And you can stick that under the back of the hive, pick it up and have somebody look at the weight.
Think about.
And then you go to the front of the hive and you do the same thing. And that's gonna give you a weight.
Yeah, think about those luggage, you weigh your luggage before you get on the airplane, because they.
That's what those
You
are.
know,
Yeah.
so a luggage, you know,
Scale.
Yeah,
scale,
they're somewhere around $10 to $20 on Amazon.
yeah. and that
So
was
you
that.
said that one medium frame of honey is how much weight?
4 pounds,
Internet says 6,
6,
8 pounds for
8. I got it. There, well. Okay, yeah, 5 pounds for a medium, and I was thinking it was 8 or 9 pounds for a deep. So if you've got 8 frames of honey, and you know, so 5 times 8, that's 40 pounds in that box. If you've got deeps, you know, so you're looking at that, so you've got to, and again, this is something where it takes experience to kind of get a feel of how much honey is left. And a little bit is going to depend on their winter. If we have a cold winter, they use less food than we have the winters like we've been having the up and down. When you have, it gets cold and it stays cold, they stay in their cluster, they eat less. When you get temperatures, and this spring, we had some days that were 80 degrees down to 30, next day 80 to 30. They break that cluster and they're moving around, and so they'll actually eat more. So a little bit is going to depend on what our winter is like, and I don't know. So, and that's one of those things you have to kind of figure out,
So
you know.
you might as well just put a sugar board on there, even if you think you might have enough honey.
Correct. So, and again, we'll talk about that more in preparation. Sugar board, you talked about feeding, you know, so again, so feeding them, that sugar board, it's okay to have extra food on there at the top, like the sugar board for them, so they've got something that they can go with.
You got a couple online questions here.
Okay,
Extracted 3 supers off of 1 hive this weekend using a brush. I felt like my bees were still on a flow, so I put the 3 wet supers back on the hive. Should I let them clean those for a few days, then take 2 of the 3 off, so there's only 1 super on the hive? Thoughts?
My thoughts would leave them on there, and because right now there's still honey coming in. And they'll clean them up. You might, and you might have it where I would not reduce my hives now, maybe in late August, September, where you're trying to shrink your hives, pull one of those boxes off, depending on how much they filled it up. So I would, personally, I would put all 3 back on and let them see what they do with it.
That would have been my suggestion.
Now, the only issue is if you're gonna treat with Formic Pro or Apiguard, you want that hive down to 2 supers or whatever your brood chamber is. And so having all that extra space up above gives room for all of those fumes to go up there instead of staying down at the bottom where they do their job.
Yeah.
And so you'll have a less effective treatment.
Yeah, so there's lots of different factors, your treatments, how you're treating, when you're treating, your spacing and that. So there are so many there is not one answer fits it, okay?
No, this may be more Ken question, but when you pull the supers from the goldenrod?
Okay, we usually, in our area, we see that the goldenrod flow starts right around the middle of September. It lasts about 10 days. Yeah, and then we usually wait until about the end of the 1st or 2nd week of October. And then we will pull all of the supers
Feed like crazy.
and feed like crazy.
Yeah, so there's that trade-off of, if you're gonna pull them at that time, they have no food to get them through the winter, you've got to feed.
And the idea is that refined sugar is actually better for the bees than.
Yeah, there's lots of discussion about, it's the molecular structure of sugar, of the goldenrod versus the straight sugar. And it makes a difference on how the bees digest it.
Is it dry sugar at that point?
No, we don't feed dry sugar until winter time.
Yeah.
Okay, until the temperatures get cold.
Yeah.
So it's liquid until, and again, that changing from liquid to the dry sugar, liquid is when the temperatures are still warm. But if you're starting to get some nights that are in the 30s, and think about water, cold, condensation. And again, so that's where the candy board has some advantage, so that's when, you got that, when it starts getting cold, get the candy board on, that will also help absorb any moisture that's in the hive.
So right now we have a box for liquid, so candy board's separate.
Right.
Something else we have to buy, right?
Yeah.
We should be.
Equipment.
You don't have to buy a candy board, is the way we feed our sugar, is we take the sugar, we mix it until it's slightly moist. And then we dry it out so that it's like a
Wafer.
sugar cube, it's the size of a meat.
We're gonna
from
cover sugar feeding and candy boards and stuff in a later winter prep.
So yeah, there's, and again, just like everything else, there's a lot of different ways of doing it.
Let's move on.
Okay, so now we've got got them all. Okay, so now you're gonna have to set up your extraction station. What I do, I put a tarp out because no matter how careful you are, you will drip honey on the floor. And then if you walk in it and stuff, and then you get this little trail into your house, and that because you've trapped it in there. So try to set it up where you are contained. And I have my extractor, and I've got a table and a table. So what I can do is again, you can use a hot, do we have a confirmation on the date for the extraction
I
party?
was just gonna check again. I've asked 3 times. I haven't
Okay,
heard.
we're trying to put together an extraction party, and if we don't have it in one place, we're gonna have it at my place. You uncap it. You've got a choice hot knife. Cindy is the bread knife queen. And
I put that on the Facebook page.
yeah, but yeah, so you've got a hot knife, you've got a bread knife, and again, we're gonna demonstrate a lot of these at that extraction event. You've got a punch roller. A punch roller is like a paint, it looks like a paint roller, but it's hard and it's got little points on it. And what your goal is to just kind of pierce the cappings is what you're trying to do. Now, that one does seem to have a lot more wax bit go and go down into it and then kind of maybe plug the strainer. So there's advantages and disadvantages to every one of them.
It's, you make your knife cut, you have a little bit left, that'd be about the only time you'd want to use it, otherwise.
Yeah, I use it as, I do the knife cut, and then where it's concave and your knife can't get to, I use it there. Some people just do the whole way. It's there's various options, and again, we're gonna actually physically show you, we'll extract honey, and you get to try the different ways, say, oh, I like this one, oh, I don't like that one. Just like everything else. Let's see, okay, a bread knife, a punch roller, scratchers is another one. It'll build up this, scratchers is like a fine, a comb, and you kind of, again, scratch down the frame, breaking it. What you're trying to do, your goal is to break that seal. And there's various methods of
I
breaking
use
that seal.
the scratcher more like I go under the capping and pull it up.
Yeah, so again, different ways.
It's also
More efficient.
a thing that looks like a fork that has a handle and you drag.
I got one of those. If you want to try it, be my guest.
Oh, I use it all the time. I don't like the scratcher. I like the fork.
Okay, so when we have our extraction event, you get to demonstrate that.
Okay.
Okay,
I
so,
might even bring my Happy Farm roller.
sure, okay. What else is there? There's technically a way of doing like a heat gun, but that, I find that one hard. What you want when you extract is a warm room. Honey flows better when it's warm. Don't have the air conditioning cranked up. Have a fairly warm room. So there's uncapping tubs, and capping tub is usually like a 2-step, and in between there's like a metal grate. So you uncap it, it falls on there, the extra honey falls into the bottom tub within that. And then, so what I do, extractor, a table. I uncap, and then I immediately, and I put myself in a position that I'm not carrying it across the room. I'm going straight from right over the tub, right into the extractor. Because if my extractor's over there and I'm extracting here, when I go and travel, that's gonna go drip, 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 all the way across the room. So think mechanically where you are doing the least amount of carrying of those frames. So I've got it, put it in the extractor, I spin, I have the luxury of having mine, and I'll spin, and I then. One of the things with the extractor, you want to have the gate primarily open. And again, it depends on how low the frames are. Because if you've got the gate closed and the honey goes into the bottom of the extractor and you're spinning and it goes up past the frames, you are now whipping air into your honey. That'll make it very cloudy, and you've got to wait to get that out to be able to bottle.
If it's hand crank, it's very hard to turn.
Okay, yeah, so you hand cranking, anybody that I've seen had a hand cranker, they actually adapted it to a variable speed driller. Because if you got 4 frames, you hate to kind of get a lot of things going, and so that may be one. When we talk about radial, an extractor that's radial, it all faces the center. It's like kind of like a washing machine. All faces. Spokes on a wheel. Good. Nice. Thank you for that analogy. Oh, that was you. Sorry. Spokes on a wheel. So, and how you place it in on that honeycomb, you think, oh, it looks horizontal. No, that honeycomb is actually tilted just a little bit to hold that honey in it before they cap it. So what you've got to do is put the top of the frame towards the outside. And so the centrifugal force will pull it out a little easier, all right?
Use both sides at the same time, right?
Correct, radial. So radial you're in, and we'll talk about tangent because it's a little bit different. So it's all this way. if I've got a 6-frame extractor, I want 6 frames. If I have 4, it's gonna wobble like crazy. So ours has a variable speed, so you turn it on and you start slowly as it's going, and it may shake a little bit. And so you don't really want to speed it up too fast, because then it'll really shake like your wash machine does. So you start it kind of slow, get it to where the frames basically even themselves out, then you can get up the speed. How long and there's various thoughts on how long you run the spinner. How long do you run it? 10 minutes? 15, 5?
Depends on the extractor.
5, so 5 minutes, yeah.
I'm not spraying any more honey on the wall.
Okay, so Cindy looks inside, if it's not spraying honey on the wall, she knows it's all up. Which makes sense, so again, looking at what it is, so you get that way, then I pull it out and put it in the table in this tub. While that's spinning, I'm uncapping these, and then I put them in the tub, so you can see, I can pick up, put in, take out, and I never move my feet. So I'm less likely to make a mess and drip, and ergonomically better for me, all right? Tangent.
And one of the little tricks that I use, like if you've been uncapping, you got your frame up like this, when you pick that frame up, if you flip it, you can walk with it for a while, because anything that's dripping on the bottom will then be holding. And I always flip it whenever I start to walk, and that way it'll you have much less chance.
Minimizes your drip.
Minimize it.
That's the way I do it. And again, everybody does it different. And again, try it, if somebody's extracting, if one of you are extracting, say, hey, I'm extracting, you wanna come help me? And so you can see different methods. So just like in the hive inspections, go to other people. Yes, Mr. Kelly?
I'm just curious, from an interaction, just to get some feedback, people's successes or failures from what they've done so far, because there's some faces here that I don't know. I don't know who's a veteran and who's not.
Who's there, who has 5 years or more of beekeeping? 4. 3. 2.
No.
Number
it's
1.
limited.
First year? Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
Yes. It's fine if you can.
So my first year, I did not harvest any honey, because I was starting with all blank frames, and they were building, and anything that they put away, I let them keep.
Right.
And I made it through the winter.
Yeah.
So I thought I was doing great until the next year when they didn't make it.
Don't worry, we're all by now. Okay. Yeah, so, and I, one time I did screw up with the radio. I put the top to the inside rather than the outside. And all of a sudden I broke 2 frames, and I'd say, and a blowout. A blowout is where you've got the frame and whatever you've done has caused the foundation to pull out of the frame. That's a blowout. All right. And I blew out 2 frames, and they fell and broke, and I've got broken frames. What I do? Oh, that's what I did wrong. So now I'm much better. Now,
Were those wax frames or plastic frames?
plastic frames. I blew them out, and it actually broke the frame stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, what are you doing? Okay, now if you, so, plastic foundation will tolerate the spinning a little better. So if you have where you start, and this is, and anybody have wax foundation that you wired and all that stuff?
We buy pre-wired.
Pre-wired, well, you get the vertical wires, but then,
We don't force out on higher, we just put bobby pins on the side and stuff.
yeah, okay, so bobby pins and stuff like that. How often do yours roll out? Not, okay.
You
So-
got it.
Supers or just the brood box?
What?
The wax?
Entirely.
Okay,
And then, aren't they?
We're sort of-
Pretty much.
We're sort of half and half on our supers.
But
Yeah, we
you
started
can't,
with
got a
that and
tangent,
everything now.
tangent on angle.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, tangential, okay, so radial, kind of like the spokes of a wheel. Tangent is where it's at the side. Those you have to be a little careful with, okay, so you still uncap both sides. When, and again, I have to think on this one because it's going one way, so I've got to think about which way I want the top to go. And let's see, it's
Yeah,
Those are the right.
Yeah.
our spins clockwise.
so clockwise, so you
And
put
so
the
we
top,
want the top to the right as an insert.
yeah. Okay, and so now you have now, like the one we have for the club, it works good for deeps, but deeps are heavy. And you go to spin it, so I've gone cap, so the honey is going out from the outside of the frame, the foundation, I should say. The inside is staying because it can't really come out yet. So now you've got, if you go too fast, it will then, the weight from the inside of the frame, because it's not really being spun out, will have a tendency to push. So, and let me go through and then you tell me how you do it, okay? So I will cut, spin, it's kind of slow, then I flip it, spin slow until I get some of that second, and then I flip and flip again. What do you do?
That's pretty much what I do is I set timer on my watch. I put it on about half speed.
Right.
I spin one side, then I flip it. And I spin the other side at half speed and then gradually move it up to full speed.
Yeah.
And then I flip back to get
The other side.
the
yeah.
other side again.
Yeah, so if you're not, so if you go too fast, too quick, that the weight of the honey from the inside will push out or blow out those frames to the outside and stuff like that. So you have to think on what physics will do for you. So
I'm thinking the cage that was designed for our spinner is probably pretty well designed, given that we've never had a blowout.
okay.
Now, we've had it shaken all over,
Don't worry, shaking's a part of all of it.
and being a fat boy, I can hold it down.
Yeah, so is it a pretty fine basket?
What, probably about like that,
Okay, maybe a couple,
Yeah.
square
2
inch,
inches.
2 inches square?
up with my cut.
Okay. Okay, so there are different basket designs. I think the one that we have for the club, we've got the 6-frame extractor that we have for the club. We do have baskets, but they're not a real small weave, I'll call it. So he's talking about, so it's all the way up and down. It's a 2-inch square, so that will hold that a little bit. The ones I think we have are more like bars, so there's not a lot of support on the outside, and that's where those frames can then blow out a little bit and stuff. So if you want to do deeps, I'm gonna recommend the 4-frame that we have versus the 6-frame. All right, if you've got mediums that you're harvesting, the 6-frame is the way to go. All right. Okay, so then throw them in the freezer, then you can throw them back on. All right, so now I've got this extractor that's full of honey. I'm gonna talk about cleaning, because that has been a little bit of an issue. Sometimes you need to return the extractor as clean as you got it or cleaner, because it needs to be able to go back out. There are certain times of the year we're just flipping it, it comes in and it goes out that afternoon. So there's not time, or should we have to spend our time to clean your mess? So, and again, there are various ways of doing it. What I do with my extractor. So I've got one that's just like the club, but a little bit bigger. I put a plastic bag, okay, so I'm done extracting. I take a spatula, try to scrape as much honey off the sides down to the drain. I actually tip it a little bit, and depending on how your drain configuration is on the extractor, I tip it to try to get as much honey to drain out of that. with, into my bucket. Within that. I then will put a plastic bag with a rubber band, kind of protect the motor from moisture. All right? Some people, there is different schools of thought, letting the bees clean it up. I let the bees clean it up. Some people, but it's also not close to my hive. So and don't worry, the bees can find it. You put it outside with a protective cover over the motor, plastic bag and a rubber band on. Open it up, let the bees clean it out. You will get some bees that get stuck in there. Some people think that that does encourage robbing. So that, there's different schools of thought. You can do that. Then what I do, and cold water. Wash it with cold water. Reason being, you think, hot water will melt the wax. All it does is smear the wax on the inside and you can't get it out. Cold water makes the wax brittle, and so you get more flakes coming out that way. Now, I use a pressure washer. Not everybody has a pressure washer. You can use a garden hose with that, real strong jet stream. Thank you for the jet stream, and go in there, and you've got to really lots and lots and lots of water. Now, you'll also have to go in on our extractor. Again, we want it clean enough that it can go out to the next person without us having to do anything. And we've had some problems. There are on the outside ring of the spokes, there's where the frame fits in, kind of like a little U shape. Sometimes some wax will go there. I have to go in and take a fingernail and kind of, again, if it's cold, I can just kind of typically break it off within that. The other thing on our extractor we're finding, where there is a gate at the bottom and there's like a little groove inside that gate. If you don't make sure that is flushed out, the honey kind of sits there and then you take it in and then it's kind of dripping honey in Cynthia's office, and that doesn't make her happy. Am I right? Doesn't make James happy either.
No.
And stuff. So you're gonna clean the inside with that hose. You can clean the outside with a hose. Cold water with it. James.
One of the things that you can do that will help to thwart a lot of that wax and stuff that happens on the inside, whenever you've got your frames inside before you're extracting, and I do this, I'll take and I'll scrape the tops of my frames and I'll scrape the bottoms of my frames, dress them up, clean up those frames before I actually put them in the extractor. And that way you don't have a bunch of wax that's caked up on the frames, and you're sticking it in the extractor and it's getting all over the inside of the extractor.
Yeah. But cold water is one, and cold and lots of water. After you washed it, dry it inside and out. Some people will use soap. You could. My concern though is soap residue. Yeah, so again, if I want, and soap doesn't do wax. If you get a lot of propolis on there, and I don't really use it on the inside of the extractor, sometimes I've got it elsewhere. Front cutter, I have to use it on my bee suit for, it's called a front cutter, and it dissolves propolis when I wash my suit and stuff like that.
So does alcohol.
Oh, and alcohol? What flavor, tequila or gin? Yeah.
So just to clarify,
Okay, go ahead, Val.
you would not recommend not even a little bit of like Dawn or any sort of dish soap, because here's what I'm thinking. Along with honey and wax, you've got bee parts, you've got other insect parts, you've got dirt, maybe you've got grass, you've got anything that was sitting on the frames or anything that picked up along the way. So you would not recommend any
I'm
any
not
soap?
saying, I'm not saying you can't use it, but you might have soap residue left in. Washing it, just using a hose, you'd be surprised how big. Okay, this is stainless steel tank. Is it
Yeah.
stainless steel?
Yeah.
It's a stainless steel tank. That stuff really is out of there. So the bee parts are out, the dirt's out. You're totally flooding that. You've got the gate open, and I'm just taking a garden hose, actually a power washer inside. So I'm flooding that inside and flushing everything out. If when I'm finished flushing it, there's still dirt, I didn't do a good job of flushing it.
Okay.
So
Okay,
really,
thank you.
have you ever seen dirt or stuff, if you flushed it enough?
No.
Actually, by the time the bees get done, it's pretty darn clean.
Yeah, after the bees do it actually, they'll clean up pretty good. Yeah, now, like I said, there may be some dead bee, sometimes they get stuck because the honey is sticky. But flushing it with that cold water will get that dirt, gets that dirt out, gets the honey parts out, and you'll find that it doesn't have, within that. So, but again, the concern would be the residue of the soap gets into the next batch of honey. So I personally, and I don't, Cynthia, you're the equipment manager, I would prefer they didn't use soap. What's your?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so that's kind of I won't scold you if you do, but I would prefer that you didn't. As Cynthia, as having to have to clean that.
Well, if it's their own, that's a different story.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with your own.
But with the equipment that's being borrowed from
Your-
the club, if that's the preferred method.
Yeah, but we do really want it clean. So it should be clean before it goes out. So it doesn't really need to be, and I think you're thinking in disinfectant type idea with it. And that's when you put it in there, you flood it, and it's not like you've left it there for days and let it mold and stuff like that. Then you're gonna have to scrub a lot. So as soon as I'm done harvesting, I go out to the bees, and then the next day I take a power washer to it and just really totally flood that thing. And again, get it. So then make sure you wipe it off, because when you bring it back, if there's any little honey and water left in that little groove on that gate, it kind of has a tendency to start dripping out, and then Cynthia or I have to clean it again, which does not make us happy.
A different question. Let's talk about extraction party, and I've got my honey and you've got your honey and somebody else has their honey. And how do you feel about it's all delicious honey, but let's talk about prepping an extractor if there's any prep between different users.
How it typically has worked is club will extract first. So they've got the first honey coating. And again, we'll do a little bit of scraping down to the bottom. You'd be surprised. The extractors are designed to get honey out, not hold the honey. So you're not gonna have a pile of honey. So everybody has to have their own bucket.
You opened up your gate, it's gonna be drawn.
Yeah, so you open up the gate, it goes into the bucket, and we'll talk more about the bucket and the straining. And then there's really very little honey left. So there is a little mixing, but very minimal within that, okay? And so the club's gonna come first, they're gonna put the first coating, and then, we're gonna get most of the, we'll just use it for demonstration, then we'll get the honey, then who's ever next. We want
Also, make sure you touch on, about proper policing before you're bringing stuff to an extraction party. We've seen some garbage show up, and that's just not right.
Yeah, so somebody brought some honey, oh yeah, you can have the honey, and I'm seeing all sorts of, in the tub was dirt, leaves, stuff like that. I refuse to extract it and or feed it to my bees. It'll look that bad. So, if you bring it in and it looks, it's full of dirt, you dropped it on the ground and it's dirt and grass and all sorts of dead bees in it, we might kind of say, you're not extracting. So you can do whatever you want on your own, but not at the extraction event. Okay?
So I'm gonna take a quick brief break here. Who here is planning on attending the extraction event if you're available?
Who's gonna have frames to extract?
And this is gonna be on a Saturday?
Yeah, and
Well, that's the next part of this.
probably typically we're gonna aim for Saturday.
So we were aiming for August 26th, but John's not available on that date or the 2nd. He could do September 16th. Or he could do Wednesday, August 23rd in the evening, or Friday, August 25th in the evening. Or
What day of the week's ago? Evening's
well,
not bad.
the Wednesday, the 23rd is a Wednesday, and Friday, the 25th is a Friday.
I could do, it doesn't have to be all around me, but Friday would be good because I could drive over after work.
Yeah, my preference would be Friday because most people don't have to work on Saturday. But-
Where's the extraction event happening at Hilco?
Yeah, Hillco, which is Monunk, so it's a little bit of a drive. That's, it depends on where you live, how much of a drive it is. So if your kids is nice and close.
Just up 39.
Yeah.
It's every bit of 45 minutes at
Oh,
least, yeah,
Okay,
but it's still a nice drive.
yeah,
Or we could do a plan B at your place,
Yeah.
which is where we used to do it.
yeah. I've done it. I open up my garage, we go for it.
Either one's good for me.
Okay.
Either Hilco or PK's place.
I think since we're recommending that they get it done before we get into heavy dirt,
Yeah,
that we might wanna look at going. And I hate to volunteer.
no, that's okay. One of the things I like going to John is you get to look at equipment.
Yeah,
That's the advantage of going to
Right.
John.
agreed.
I'll go for Friday. And we'll bring me too,
So Friday would be the 25th
of August.
of August, which is the day before we were originally planning, which was,
Yeah, 20. So,
So-
that's my vote.
so who else is planning on going and what's your votes? We want to make it as,
And again, you don't have to bring frames. It's okay to look, to watch other people extract. Oh, I didn't try that. So it's, you don't have to bring frames. So if you got a few frames, you can do it. If not, but what's real nice is,
he said Friday evening, so I was
I would say
thinking 6 to 8:30 or
Yeah.
9.
yeah, 6 to 8,
Sure.
6 to 8.
Okay.
And because
I'll be there.
you have a lot of equipment, and then if you need a bucket for your honey, you can say, hey, John, I need a bucket. And
strainer too.
we will have strainers. Okay, but then you get to look at the different kind of strainers. You get to look at the different kind of extractors. You get to look at what a hide butler is.
And those stainless steel strainers that we've switched over to, it's a huge time saver. And I don't even know what we spent, but I already know it was money well spent.
Okay. We'll be coming to that. And what were you using before? Plastic.
We were using those 3 micron strainers.
Oh, yeah,
plastic,
you like
it was terrible.
Still better?
Yeah.
Are they the ones with the little,
Yes.
Yeah.
and it's got 2 strainer baskets?
I went the other way.
See, again, and it's whatever works for you. You try one, and the club has both. You try one, say, I like this. Or again, I had problems with those plastic. The first one got clogged, the weight went down, went like that, and it kind of went out the side.
I guess we use both. We
Yeah.
use stainless steel first for the first extraction, and then we use the 200 and 400 micron plastic ones.
Okay.
After that.
We'll come back to that. Okay, let's get clean on this extract. Okay, so I've got my extractor clean. I'll wipe out the outside, make sure it's good and dry. Turnaround time, you need to be organized because at certain times of year it's highly used. And so we're asking you to turn around in about 5 days. Is that, unless if Cindy can say, hey, somebody wants it this day, you need to bring it back. And don't go, gee, I want it tomorrow. It's already, if somebody else has made the reservation, you might not get it.
It's always nice a week to a week and a half ahead of time,
Yeah, and your email is your preferred method,
or text to.
but you don't do the text during the weekends too much, do you?
I know, we do.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I don't see my email over the weekend.
Okay, I knew something wasn't over the weekend. So text, but put your reservation in for it when you want it. And we've had people say, oh, well, let me just have it the day before and I'll do it and return it. And that person was one of the ones that didn't clean it very well. And they kind of insisted that I have to have, I'm more important than other people. Sorry, you're all fair game, sorry. And if you're that important, get your own. Okay, so you extract the honey. So we've been talking about strainers. There are some plastic strainers, and what you do is the biggest hole to the smallest hole, whichever system you use. So it's a big hole, a medium hole, and a small hole on the plastic ones. There are some metal ones. It kind of looks like almost like cake pan size. It's about this deep, but then the bottom one kind of comes like this, and it's got a handles that go the width of the bucket within that. And so you want that underneath that. Now, when I talked about that punch roller, there's a lot of wax. If there's a lot of wax in your uncapping, so it's still on the frames, when it goes in down and starts going through the filter, it'll start plugging it. I saw a method of a hop strainer that we're gonna demonstrate and see how it works. And slightly different, a metal strainer, but slightly different design within it. So you're gonna have to, you typically strain it before you put it into your bucket, first bucket. Now, here's what I do. So because again, I'm small, my 12 frame will fill a 5-gallon bucket. So what I do is I have a bucket underneath and I get it about half full. And then I pour it into another bucket that is going to stay there. And then, so I don't have to try and lift off the ground a 5-gallon bucket. Honey is 12 pounds a gallon. So if you're 5-gallon, you're looking at 60 pounds.
Yeah.
So I kind of fill it half full, dump it in the bucket it's going to be stored in, dump it in one it's going to be stored in. Then, okay, so that's what I do. Other people don't. That's okay. Depends on how full that bucket is getting. But it does take some time for that strainer to allow that honey to seep through. And the more wax you have, the slower it is. If you have, and some seasons, the honey is very thick. If it's kind of left over from the year before, the bees didn't use it. It is a very thick honey, and it doesn't drain well. It doesn't spin well as drain well. So again, keeping it warm. Now, here's now how, now I will suggest you get your own bottling bucket. Any buckets you use need to be food grade. Now, you can get at Menards, you can, at Lowe's, they've got food grade buckets.
Menards does too.
Right, Menards does, probably Home Depot, John, but Tractor Supply, it needs to be food grade and labeled as food grade, all right? And a good sealing on it. So so I've got 6 buckets. I don't have 6 bottling buckets, but I've got 6 buckets full of honey. I then take my bottling bucket and I put a paint strainer in it. Then I take the bucket my storage bucket, pour it into my bottling bucket so it gets strained just one more time, a little finer. And you're going for the wax bit. But you want it to kind of set in that bottling bucket just a little bit, because if I'm pouring it and immediately bottle it, I'm going to get a lot of air in that honey and stuff like that. So that's why it might not be a bad idea to have your own honey bottling bucket, because you can bottle it at the extraction, bottle it at home, pour it in there, but then you can take your time as to when you bottle it. Bottling does take a little bit of time. It is not, something real, and it's a little tricky because you got to fill the bottle to what they call the shoulders. So the shoulders, and seal it. If you're selling it, you need to make sure you know what the weight of it is, because it's sold by weight. Different bottles have different weights. All right.
The other thing that we like to do.
bottle is not a pound.
Yeah.
The other thing we like to do is, not only do we have one of those refractometers for checking the frames as they come out, we also have it for checking the batch. So
Right.
we try to fill about a 50-pound bucket of honey. And even though the Club's extract or refractometer is about $400, we use the $22 one that's available on Amazon. Make sure you get the one that has is a honey refractometer, but it's got 3 scales on it. If it's only got 2 scales on it, it's probably just for home brewing. So, and Dave Burns even had a thing where he talked about that.
I don't know,
same
does
thing.
John's still with that not?
I texted that from our Bees and Brews the other day. He didn't answer
Okay.
because someone was asking me about it.
We found different.
But I didn't see any.
Water contents from the top of the bucket and the bottom, so
Yeah.
we'll check it.
So which was higher?
The top was lower. Is that right?
No,
Now I
I
can't
wasn't there.
Now I can't remember.
I also was watching on I was watching a random YouTube video on, I think someone was, I watch a lot of bee stuff. I do. But random YouTube video, someone was storing their honey in one of those standard food grade buckets, and it ended up splitting on the side, and it spilled honey everywhere. There is a distinction in the thickness of the plastic that's used, and there's I'll try to find it and maybe email it to you, PK, but you can buy the thicker polyethylene, whatever it is, buckets that specifically are rated for heavier weights. So if you happen to fill up your bucket to be full, which I also will not be able to lift, but if you happen to fill up your bucket to be full, the bucket can actually take that weight.
Yeah. Now Menards, they do have the more heavy duty buckets.
Yeah.
They just-
Okay.
so-
Okay,
And the
so,
other thing we do about, getting that full to 50 pounds is we've taken one food grade bucket and sacrificed the bottom so that we can set that sleeve, like you're stacking buckets, set that sleeve on top. And then it,
It holds the strainer up above
Oh,
the
yeah,
the bucket.
yeah,
So-
Otherwise, it's down in the.
Into it.
yeah, so you only get about 3 gallons.
yeah, well, I've got, and I can show various things, there's various ways of lifting that up, but it's gotta be able to fit underneath the extractor.
Right.
Right.
Gate and stuff like that. Okay, so I've got it in my bucket, I'm looking at time.
Yeah.
Bottling is a little, okay, so bottling, if I'm just using it for me, I don't care, I don't care if it's full, you can use just quart jars, the canning jars, if it's just me. If you're marketing it, you need to up your ante on that. You need to make your honey look pretty, so you want a nice looking bottle, clean looking bottle. I'm judging honey tomorrow, and how it looks in the bottle is gonna be one of the, if they bring me a mason jar, or somebody else has a honey specific jar, who's gonna get the better score? All right, and again, people go by look. So, and I like glass versus plastic, but plastic squeeze bears are nice. But there is a clear plastic squeeze bear, and there is a opaque bear. The clear looks better, the opaque is easier to squeeze. So, there's this trade-off. And again, there is, if you look at a jar, there is a shoulder, I'll call it on it. So it's where you got the screw cap, and right where it's kind of like goes up, all your jars, that's considered the shoulder, that's how full it can be.
It's like a rim.
Yeah, it's like a rim.
I had to go to the top of the first bead. Doesn't have to go for show, doesn't have to go to the top of the first bead.
It says collar, it says the collar, I can look, it's in the car,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's.
like there's
No, shoulder,
out of that already.
it says shoulder.
So that would not be considered.
Okay, this is not full because I poured some in the little, so where this wide, this top shoulder, that's where it should be at. Okay, so this bottle would be there.
And we really like this style of bottle because 30 of them will fit in a strawberry flat, and then you can stack them on top of each other for storage.
Okay, so this one has, okay, you see this like little rim? The top of this little rim is where it needs to be filled. Now, your weight, it's sold by weight versus volume. So now the candy jars, this is like a candy jar. What it says in ounces is not what honey is. So what you can do, and you'll get a feel, what I'll do is maybe I'll have one, I put it on my scale, zero it out, fill it, and then I know, and again, they're pretty standard as far as the sizes, as far as what the weight will be. So I do one just to make double check that I'm at the right weight I want to be. So it's sold by weight. So on your label, you need weights. You're supposed to have ounces and grams. I think most people just do ounces. There are some labeling restrictions, especially if you are selling commercial. It needs to say what it is. What mine says wildflower honey. It needs to say how much it is, 16 ounces, a pound, a honey bottle pound of 16 ounces, not the candy jar of 16 ounces. They're different. It needs to kind of look where it's basically from. So it says Hayworth, Illinois. So that's where it's from. And a contact. It could be your phone number, it could be your email, and that one. If you are selling at a farmer's market, the health department will want a nutritional label on it. So, so if you have a nutritional label on it, if you're selling at a farmer's market and stuff.
And you can buy those already.
Yeah,
It
they're pretty
depends,
big.
Patty, it depends on county.
Yeah, so,
Because not all counties require the nutritional label.
yeah, so again, no, if you're selling it, know the rules. And as so he's, and as he's saying, one county says this, one county says that. That health department rules across the board on a
And
variety
some
of
of it
areas.
is all based on USDA rules.
Yeah, and so, so you do have to go by your local rules as opposed to there are some national, but it needs to tell what it is, where it's from, how to contact you, and the weight. And they do ask, I have nines and ounces, but they say ounces and grams is what they should say. Anything else that should be on the label that you can think of? Now, I purposely try to have my labels on my jar as fairly small. The look of honey sells, right? I had one buddy, those blue canning jars? I thought, oh, they're pretty, they're blue. He poured it in. You got green. And it's kind of like, okay, that doesn't look real good. So, on my labels, I do try to keep it on small, so they're seeing the honey within that and stuff. And marketing, that's a whole big lesson. Okay,
It's
now,
not required, but I usually put, don't give to children under a year.
Age of 2.
I think what? Yeah, so
My labels say one.
yeah,
but-
mine say 1, 2. I also talk about if it crystallizes, because some people, it crystallized, it went bad, I throw it away.
Yeah, I've gotten a bunch of calls about that, so I started putting that on my label.
Yeah, all honey typically will crystallize. And what you have to do is, your preferred method be in warm water, maybe maybe in the sunlight. I do not, or a warm oven that you can control the temperature. I've got a dehydration, so I can set it at 100 and liquefy it that way. Microwave is not the best suggestion, especially with plastic bottles. No, it doesn't work, but it also kills all the enzymes that you're trying to sell.
You can put it in a crock pot on warm.
Yeah.
With a towel. Put the towel in your crock pot, put it in there on warm, and depending on how crystallized it
yeah.
is, yeah, and it doesn't destroy the natural properties.
Yeah, so there's a temperature you wanna watch.
I turn the crystallization thing around and I tell them that if it's pasteurized, it won't crystallize.
Right.
Mhm.
And so if it does crystallize, that's gonna tell you more that it's more natural honey. And so I flip that and turn it into a positive.
Salesman that you are.
That could bite you in the butt though, because there are some honeys that won't crystallize.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
that's-
Okay,
Not around here so much.
Yes.
Do you recommend bottling the honey if you're storing it long term, or would you leave it in the bucket?
your turn.
Does
Now,
one crystallize faster than the other?
okay, you go now.
So, last year, we had about this much left in a bucket that never got put into bottles, it crystallized. So then you either have to have a bucket warmer or like a electric blanket or something. I ended up like chopping it up and taking it out, but then it was still crystallized in the gate.
I've got a bucket warmer, that's what I use, but I also I got a short little paint, paint mixer that is dedicated that I can kind of mix the honey, so because sometimes the outside edge will be starting to liquefy and the inside still kind of, so I've got a dedicated clean, real clean, paint. It's a short one,
Well,
real.
when you're heating that up, that crystallization, that stuff tends to fall to the
Right,
bottom.
and so that's why
And that's gonna be your last little bit, and we've had it where this looks great, we stir it, this looks great, we didn't actually scrape it on the bottom. Poured it into the thing to bottle it, and then we got crystallization inside the bottle.
And that's where, okay, so sometimes you get crystallization, so in my bottling, so it's stored in a bucket. I'm gonna put it in my bottling bucket. I have that paint strainer. Paint strainers are about, 3 of them were $5 or something like that. I put the strainer in and I've actually got some rubber bands that'll hold it in place. And that will pull out the crystallization from that. And then I have to go take that crystallize and go that way. Now, cleaning the strainers, your buckets, again, going back to Cindy, it needs to be clean enough that it can go back out. We just recently had one, I cleaned the extractor and the bucket, and you cleaned something, anyway.
Yes.
It's been a couple hours cleaning somebody else's mess. I didn't make me happy, that's why you're hearing about this. So you know.
The last guy that just brought it back, you could eat off of it.
That's what I like.
You did.
Tell them, good job. So, okay, so your tank, your uncapping tank, you've got to, again, flood it with water. The metal grate will have a lot of wax in it. You've got to get that wax scraped off and then you put it together. Strainers, I will put, like my spatulas, my strainer, stuff like that. I put it out and let the bees clean it up and then I wash it. I get it clean. My strainer, once I've got like 99% of the wax off it, I will actually run my strainers through the dishwasher to get that final little bit. Word of warning, if you have a lot of wax in it and you put it in the dishwasher, you could be clogging your drains. So again, don't rinse wax down drains. Whether, your sink, your dishwasher, even your toilet, unless it will coat the inside and there's no way to get it out of there type thing. So you got to get the wax off of it, then you can run it through the dishwasher. The bottling bucket, just like the gate on the bottling bucket is just like the gate on the extracting tank. There's this little groove in there. You need to make sure it's wiped and clean. So the gate is kind of a hole and you've got something that you put up and down over it within it. Make sure the inside of that is also clean within that. What else have we ended up with? Yeah.
I just have one question. Okay,
Yeah.
so you spin it out, drain it out, goes to the sieve.
Yeah.
How long do you let it sit with all the air bubbles and piece of wax?
A day.
Before you bottle it, just a
A
day
day.
to settle out?
I have a hint on that too. When you get that foam at the top, if you don't get that foam off, when you're bottling, you're gonna get down to right about there, and then all of a sudden you're gonna see all these bubbles. When your bucket is full and that foam is at the top, take a piece of plastic wrap, push it down over the top of it, and then pull it up real fast and put it in a bowl, and it'll pull 98% of those bubbles off.
Yeah.
That's the beekeeper's cut.
Yeah.
The best part of the whole.
Yeah. So and again, I've
Free toast.
seeing it hands, there's one other method that Tyler likes. What method do you like, Tyler?
I like the method where you can use.
You smushed it out?
Way you smoke it.
There is, you can, if some people will do a crush method, and this has to do with the top bar hive. There's no way you can spin a top bar hive. So he crushed it. But in our kit, we have kind of like a rectangular yellow thing that goes on the bucket and it kind of holds on the bucket. It's got a slot for the frame, and you take your hive tool and you just slice the comb and wax off. All right, so that's going to be, it's called the crush and strain method. It does take some time for the honey to kind of drain itself out. Again, being warmer will get, and stuff. And so you scrape it into your bucket. I would advise having like that, paint strainer in there. You can go there and it's gonna take a couple days for that all to come out and stuff like that. So that is another method, very simple. Now, the disadvantage is the bees have to rebuild all that comb. So 8 pounds of honey makes 1 pound of comb. Or 1 pound of wax, I should say, in that respect. Did I cover everything pretty good?
Yeah, because you just covered streamers there, so I've been checking them all off and, yeah.
So again, the big thing is plan in your borrowing of the equipment of turning it back in clean. She has the primary, so she's got the primary extractor and the extracting kit. I have some of the ancillary equipment, so I've got the refractor, I've got candle molds, I've got a solar melter. What else do we got?
It's on the list.
It's on the list. You will get an electronic list with the description how to clean and what you have available. All right.
Got a colorizer too, I can't remember what.
Yeah, okay. Razor measures the color of your honey. Remember we kind of earlier talked, it could be, we were talking about, you were asking about color, it could be just about clear white to just about black and everywhere in between. There we do have a thing, it's a little, who cares what color it is to me, anyway, I'm fine. But we do have something that measures that color, and that has a little bit more to do with fair type of the state fair measurements on what they do. And older beekeepers have a tendency to like the light color. More renegade beekeepers like the dark color. So, and it doesn't matter, it measures your color, you can measure the color.
Well, actually, when you go to a honey show, there's several different classes. And so they have a class for the light colored honey. They have a class for medium color. They have a class for
I've never been to your state fair. Not for
this
honey.
was at the High Blind Conference.
Yeah, state fair does too.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
gotta log off. Thank you, PK. Thank
Okay,
you.
I think
I know.
Hey, Val. before you
Bye-bye.
leave,
Bye.
Oh.
John has confirmed for Friday, August 29th, 6 to 9.
All right, good.
25th, I'm sorry, 25th.
Okay. I will
25th,
send
6 to
that.
9. I'll be there.
Okay, it's a Friday night. But it's Friday night, we'll be safe.
And then we
Okay.
have our tips for.
And we don't have a lot of time. Okay, Ken has gone through tips. You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
You don't happen to have that PowerPoint up there on the thing, do you?
The one you
No.
sent, I do.
Okay.
But it'll take me 5 minutes.
Okay, but you got 5 minutes.
Okay.
You're down to 4.5.
So,
Okay, she's gonna send it out
with
electronically.
doing the tips for August. Off the top of my head, what I believe were the, 4 main points that I tried to make is one, this is sort of the time to be harvesting the honey off of your supers. Part of the reason is that if the bees are needing to eat the honey out of your supers, well, that slows down the process of the queen laying. August is the time that we want to look at raising more bees to be producing our winter bees. So James already alluded to that right now, when you get into dirt, you want to simulate a white honey nectar flow. So, you want to pull your supers, even if they're not completely capped. And I found some references to things. In fact, Valerie talked about it briefly, that she was going to put her boxes over a box fan, put it in a room that's warm, put it in a room that has a dehumidifier. And so like your extra bathroom, if you happen to have one, and that way you can draw the nectar or the moisture content with even that uncapped honey. down.
Let's back up real quick. Harvest our honey. If we start feeding sugar water, we don't want to harvest any of the rest of the honey, right?
Right, well, what you're doing is you're reducing your boxes down to just your brood box size. And that brood box, you know, if they're having to eat their own honey, they don't tend to raise a lot of bees. So you're gonna be feeding them. The other advantage of feeding them in this birth period is that by feeding them, you can also encourage them to build comb. We had a hive that we had put another 10 frame box on top of just foundation. And in the month of August, they built out 10 frames. So, you know, you can feed aggressively. You can increase your brood strength. And when that fall nectar flow of goldenrod comes, you know, we look at the end of the first week of September, putting our supers back on.
So you take your feet off then,
Yeah,
to put the supers back on.
yeah, we put our supers on and then they start filling up those boxes. The other thing is they tend to fill up some of those frames with nectar. So that's refined sugar. So you're providing them with a source of sugar that won't cause nosema. The diarrhea type, or, you know, backed up bowel syndrome, you know. So anyway, look at replacing your queens. If you have a queen that has already overwintered one winter. One reason for doing that is each year that the queen is in the hive, you know, like they can lay 2,000 eggs a day, you know, that first year. But studies are showing that maybe they're about 80% of that capacity the next year. So, and I've seen queens shut down and, you know, it's like they're laying great and then all of a sudden they're not laying anything when other queens are doing good.
That's just after 2 years or 3 years?
I would recommend that after that queen has overwintered a year.
So in a sense, she's.
Commercial beekeepers requeen every year, every August.
Yeah, so, you know,
Vicious.
in this downtime where they're not producing honey, it's a good time to put in a new queen, get her started going, feeding her, producing brood, that kind of thing. But yeah, treat for mites.
Yeah.
Do your mite counts, check for mites. If you need to, treat for them. And what else did I have there?
Balance your hive population.
Okay, so balance your hive population. So as you're building up hives, if you happen to have 3 hives, 2 are doing great, 1 is struggling, pull a frame of brood from that great hive, put it in the struggling hive. Make sure the queen's not there. But, you know, you can move her over. You know, you do risk the chance that they may get so overfed that they want to swarm. So you gotta watch that. But if you're feeding them well, if they're producing.
That's how you get your new queen.
Yeah, but you don't wanna be out of control on that. You wanna be in control. And people like Mike Lavasa and Tom Panconen, they have been working very hard at obtaining stock that are VSH resistant. I've gotten a number of queens from them. And so I'm trying to improve the genetics of my apiary by bringing in VSH resistant queens. The queens that you get from the packages that come from Georgia, quite often, they're not really that well mated. So another reason to even consider replacing, you know, package queens. But, you know, Mike does something called a Harbo count, which helps determine the efficacy of the queens that he has in his overwintered stock. And so he also works that into his program. So I talked with Mike more about it because Tom's just so stinking busy. He can't ever get to talk to us.
So how do I know I'm in a I mean, where I am right now, they are bringing in the nectar like crazy.
Okay,
Yeah, I have a lot of wildflower beds around me.
So what, you may be having dirt and he's not. even
Okay,
though-
so-
it's.
yeah,
It's okay to
Yeah.
leave my supers on, let them hit as far as they
yeah,
can.
if you can see that they're bringing in
Okay.
nectar,
Yeah.
you know, now the best way would be, as James mentioned, to take one of those scales and sort of lift like just your supers. And so, you know, if this is your super
Mhm.
and there's another one on top, you can just lift, you know, break it free. And then lift on the handle with that scale that James talked about. And that'll give you an idea, you know, like this week is maybe 30 pounds. Next week it'll
Okay.
register.
Two other ways to tell. So if you've got a frame that's partially capped
Yeah.
and not capped at the bottom, they will take that nectar out of there first. So if you look at a frame and it's capped and empty cells, that you're in a drought.
Oh,
Because
they
they're-
are so full and just, yeah, so I'll.
And
leave
another
it.
way is if you put out honey for them, but you have your wet frames or
Right.
whatever, and they show no interest, you've got
Yeah.
nectar coming out.
Yeah.
If they're
Okay.
all over it, you're in a drought.
Yeah, so like 3 weeks
Okay.
ago, like, put out the extractor and stuff, they kind of like, weren't interested, now they're a little bit more interested.
Where we were, we pulled all of our honey supers last Saturday. And we got like 2/3 of them full and we had bees all over our truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we had to, what we did is we just pulled out and left, and then came back afterwards and got the rest of them
Okay.
later on, but they were definitely rolling out on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I'll send out your notes,
Yeah.
that you just kind of repeated and stuff, and the cleaning and stuff like that, so I'll send that out, and,
Yeah,
and that, all right.
so that's the document.
Okay, now I've got the questions, but, okay. So I need chairs stacked up over there, tables folded, slid over there, and thanks for joining us online. Whoever was there,
Valerie.
Okay.
That's like my dog.
and sample of honey. And that-